The morning Earth changed forever started like any other. Captain Ana Rivera stood on the observation deck of the International Space Defense Station, watching the sun rise over the blue marble that was her home. Coffee steam curled up from her mug as she reviewed the daily reports. Mining operations on Luna were running smoothly. The Mars colonies were expanding ahead of schedule. Everything was normal. Then the alarm started. Captain Rivera to the command center immediately, came the urgent voice over the speakers. Ana dropped her coffee and ran through the corridors, her boots echoing against the metal floors. The command center buzzed with activity. Officers moved between stations, their faces tense with worry. "Report," Ana called out as she entered. Lieutenant Torres turned from his console, his dark eyes wide with disbelief. "Ma'am, we have multiple contacts approaching from deep space. The signatures don't match anything in our database." Ana moved to the main display screen. What she saw made her blood run cold. 12 massive ships moved toward Earth in perfect formation. Each vessel was the size of a city, their crystalline hulls catching and reflecting starlight like precious gems. They moved with purpose and power that spoke of technology far beyond human understanding. "Time to Earth orbit?" Ana asked, trying to keep her voice steady. 18 hours at their current speed, Torres replied. "They're not responding to any of our communication attempts." Ana nodded grimly. "Send word to Earth Command. Full alert status. And get me a direct line to President Chin." The next few hours passed in a blur of emergency meetings and desperate preparations. Earth's defense fleet, impressive by human standards, looked like toys compared to the approaching alien vessels. Every military leader, scientist, and diplomat was called to emergency sessions. Plans were made and discarded. Weapons were readied that everyone knew would be useless. Then, exactly 18 hours after their detection, the alien ship stopped. They formed a perfect circle around Earth, close enough to cast shadows on the surface below. The largest ship, a cathedral of crystal and light, positioned itself directly above the Pacific Ocean. The message came in perfect English, broadcast to every communication device on Earth and in orbit. The voice was female, melodic but cold, like wind chimes made of ice. "People of Earth. I am Queen Vex of the Zenthari Empire. Your species has reached the level of development that requires our attention. You will provide one representative to undergo the proving ritual within 72 hours. This representative will determine whether your species joins our confederation as equals or serves as subjects. Choose wisely." The message ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. In the hours that followed, the arguing began. World leaders debated through video conferences that stretched deep into the night. Military commanders suggested their best soldiers. Scientists recommended Nobel Prize winners. Diplomats pushed for experienced negotiators who had spent decades in international relations. Ana listened to it all from the space station's conference room. Names were thrown around like playing cards. General Martinez, hero of the Antarctic crisis. Dr. Sarah Kim, who had solved the fusion energy problem. Ambassador Williams, who had negotiated the Moon Treaty. "We need someone who can fight," insisted General Morrison from Earth Command. "This sounds like a combat trial." "Fighting won't help us here," countered Dr. Rodriguez from the Science Council. "We need pure intelligence. Someone who can think their way through alien puzzles." "You're both wrong," said Ambassador Park from the United Nations. "This is clearly a diplomatic situation. We need someone who can negotiate, who understands cultures and communication." Ana watched the debates with growing frustration. Everyone was thinking inside their own boxes, assuming the aliens would test humans the same way humans would test aliens. But what if they were wrong? What if the Zenthari were looking for something else entirely? That's when she thought of Ben. Benjamin Walsh was nobody special, at least not by the standards being discussed in these meetings. He worked as a maintenance engineer on the lunar mining stations. No advanced degrees, no military rank, no diplomatic experience. He fixed things when they broke and solved problems that others couldn't handle. Anna had met Ben 3 years earlier during a routine inspection of Luna Station 7. A critical life support system had failed, and the best engineers couldn't figure out what was wrong. They had replacement parts, backup systems, and detailed manuals, but nothing worked. The station was slowly dying. Then Ben had walked over, looked at the system for 10 minutes, and fixed it with a piece of wire and a modified circuit board. When asked how he knew what to do, he had just shrugged and said, "It seemed lonely. Just needed to be connected properly." That wasn't the only time Anna had heard stories about Ben. He had a reputation throughout the lunar colonies for solving impossible problems. When the atmosphere processors on Station 3 started producing toxic gases, Ben found a solution that saved 200 lives. When the mining robots on Station 5 began attacking each other, Ben figured out they were lonely and modified their programming to let them work in pairs. Other engineers called his methods unorthodox. They said he didn't follow proper procedures. But his solutions always worked, and they often worked better than the original designs. Anna's communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the alien ship." The main screen lit up with an image that took Anna's breath away. Queen Vex stood in what appeared to be a throne room made entirely of crystal. The alien queen was tall and elegant, her body composed of what looked like living diamond. Light moved through her crystalline form in patterns that suggested both beauty and terrible power. Her eyes were deep purple gems that seemed to see everything. "People of Earth," Queen Vex said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have 60 hours remaining. We have observed your debates. We know you struggle to choose. Let me be clear about what awaits your representative. The proving ritual consists of 3 trials. First, a test of mental capacity. Second, a test of adaptability under pressure. Third, a test of essence manipulation, what you might call strength of will. Most species fail. Those who fail serve. Those who succeed join us as equals. Choose your representative carefully. This choice will determine your species' future for all time." The transmission ended, leaving the conference room in heavy silence. "Mental capacity," muttered Dr. Rodriguez. "That confirms it. We need our best scientist." "Adaptability under pressure," said General Morrison. "That's military training right there. We need a soldier." "Essence manipulation," whispered Ambassador Park. "What does that even mean?" Anna stood up slowly. Every eye in the room turned to her. As the ranking military officer in space, she had the authority to make this choice, but she also had the responsibility to live with the consequences. "I've made my decision," she said quietly. "Excellent," said General Morrison. "I recommend Colonel Davis from the Special Forces. He's been in more impossible situations than anyone alive." "Dr. Kim is the obvious choice," insisted Dr. Rodriguez. "Her IQ scores are off the charts." "If I may," began Ambassador Park, "Secretary General Hassan has experience with dozens of different cultures and—" "No," Anna interrupted. "I choose Benjamin Walsh." The room exploded into protests. Voices rose over each other in a chorus of disbelief and anger. Anna waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "Ben Walsh is a maintenance engineer on Luna Station 7, she said calmly. "He has no advanced degrees, no military training, and no diplomatic experience." "Then why?" demanded General Morrison, his face red with anger. "Why choose someone so ordinary when the fate of our species hangs in the balance?" Anna looked at each of them in turn. These were good people, smart people, people who had dedicated their lives to serving humanity. But they were all thinking like humans, preparing for human-style tests. "Because," Anna said slowly, "the Zenthari aren't testing us the way we would test each other. They're looking for something specific, something that makes humans different from every other species they've encountered. Ben has something that none of our experts have. "And what's that?" asked Dr. Rodriguez. Anna smiled for the first time in hours. "He has the ability to see problems differently than anyone else. He doesn't just solve things the way they're supposed to be solved. He finds completely new ways to approach problems, ways that no one else would think of. If the Zenthri want to understand what makes humans special, Ben is our best example of human creativity and intuition." The room fell silent again. Anna could see the doubt in their faces, the fear that she was throwing away humanity's future on a wild guess. She felt that fear too, but she also felt something else, certainty. Ben was the right choice. She couldn't explain it logically, but she knew it in her bones. "The decision is made," Anna said with finality. "Get me a communication link to Luna Station 7. I need to speak with Ben Walsh." As her officers scrambled to establish the connection, Anna looked out at the alien ships surrounding Earth. Somewhere out there, Queen Vex was waiting to see what humanity would offer. In a few hours, that would be Ben Walsh, an ordinary engineer who fixed broken things and saw solutions where others saw only problems. Anna hoped she was right about him. Because if she wasn't, humanity would spend the rest of its existence serving crystal-bodied masters among the stars. The communication link crackled to life, and Ben's familiar voice came through the speakers. "Luna Station 7, this is Ben. Something wrong with the station communications array?" Anna took a deep breath. "Ben, this is Captain Rivera. I need you to come to Earth immediately. We have a job for you. The most important job in human history." Ben Walsh had never been on a spaceship before, but he found himself remarkably calm as the Zenthri transport vessel carried him toward their testing facility. The ship itself was a marvel of crystal and light, its walls humming with energy that felt almost alive. Ben ran his fingers along the smooth surfaces, noting how the patterns of light responded to his touch. "Fascinating," he murmured to himself. "It's like the whole ship is one big circuit board." The Zenthri escort, a tall crystalline being named Instructor Zara, observed Ben with what might have been confusion. Her diamond-like face showed no expression, but the light patterns flowing through her body shifted from blue to yellow, indicating uncertainty according to the basic information Anna had given him. "You are not afraid," Zara stated, her voice carrying musical tones. Previous candidates from other species showed fear, anger, or excitement. "You show none of these." Ben shrugged, still examining the ship's interior. "Fear won't help me understand how this works. Anger definitely won't. As for excitement, well, I save that for when I figure something out." The testing facility appeared ahead of them, a massive structure that looked like a crystal cathedral floating in space. It was easily 10 times larger than any human space station, with spires and chambers extending in all directions. Light moved through its transparent walls like liquid starlight. "The proving ground," Zara announced. 1,000 species have been tested here. 732 failed. "What happened to the ones who failed?" Ben asked. "They serve the Empire in various capacities. Mining, construction, basic maintenance of our outer territories." Ben nodded thoughtfully. "And the ones who passed? They become partners in our confederation. Equal voices in the ruling council." As their transport docked, Ben noticed something odd about the facility's design. "Your testing center," he said to Zara, "it's built like a maze, but the energy flows are all wrong." Zara's light patterns shifted to orange, a color Ben hadn't seen before. "What do you mean?" "The power distribution. It's inefficient. You're losing about 15% of your energy through unnecessary routing. Simple modifications to the crystal matrix would fix that." For the first time since meeting her, Zara stopped walking. "You can see our energy flows?" "Sure. It's like looking at electrical wiring, just prettier. The patterns show where the power goes and where it gets stuck." Deep within the facility, Queen Vex watched this exchange through the monitoring systems. She had observed every testing candidate for the past 3 centuries, and none had ever commented on the facility's design within minutes of arrival. Most were too intimidated or too focused on preparing for the trials to notice their surroundings. Ben was led to a preparation chamber where he was given a brief explanation of what awaited him. The first trial would test his mental capacity through complex puzzles and logical challenges. The second would test his adaptability by placing him in dangerous situations that required quick thinking and resourcefulness. The third would test his essence manipulation, his ability to project his will and mental energy in ways that could affect the physical world. Any questions? Zara asked. Just one, Ben replied. Why do you test like this? To determine the capabilities of each species. To see if they can contribute to the Empire's growth and prosperity. Ben tilted his head. But you're not really testing what makes a species special, are you? You're testing how well they can copy what you already do. Zara's light patterns went dark for a moment, something Ben had not seen before. Explain. Well, every species you've tested probably approaches these trials the same way. They try to solve your puzzles using logic, survive your dangers using strength or speed, and manipulate essence using whatever passes for willpower in their culture. But that just tells you who's best at being like you. It doesn't tell you what new things they might bring to the table. Before Zara could respond, a new voice filled the chamber. It was Queen Vex herself, speaking through the facility's communication system. Human Benjamin Walsh. You will begin the first trial now. The chamber walls became transparent, revealing a vast room filled with floating geometric shapes made of crystal. Each shape glowed with different colors and patterns. A holographic display appeared in front of Ben, showing a complex three-dimensional puzzle. You must arrange the crystal forms to create a perfect harmonic resonance, Queen Vex's voice explained. You have 2 hours. Previous record for completion is 47 minutes, achieved by the Valdorian candidate. Ben studied the puzzle for several minutes, walking around the floating crystals and observing how light moved through them. The other candidates had probably approached this mathematically, calculating angles and frequencies until they found the right combination. Instead, Ben closed his eyes and listened. The crystals were humming, each one producing a slightly different tone. Some harmonized with others, some clashed, and some seemed to be trying to match frequencies but couldn't quite reach them. Ben opened his eyes and began moving the crystals, not based on mathematical calculations, but based on what sounded right. In the observation chamber, Queen Vex watched with growing interest. Ben's approach was completely different from anything in her database. He wasn't calculating resonance frequencies or mapping harmonic progressions. He was listening to the crystals as if they were musical instruments. More surprisingly, it was working. The crystals responded to his movements with increasing harmony, their combined tones growing more beautiful with each adjustment. But Ben didn't stop when he achieved perfect harmonic resonance. Instead, he continued adjusting the formation. Curious, Queen Vex murmured. He has solved the puzzle, but he continues working. The harmonic resonance that emerged from Ben's final arrangement wasn't just perfect, it was something new. The crystals sang together in a way that had never been heard before, their combined music creating harmonies that seemed to touch something deeper than sound. Ben stepped back, satisfied. There, he said. They're happy now. Happy? Zara asked, confusion clear in her voice. The crystals. They weren't just out of harmony. They were lonely. Each one was trying to sing, but they couldn't hear each other properly. Now they can make music together. Queen Vex's crystalline form had gone completely still in the observation chamber. In 800 years of conducting trials, no candidate had ever suggested that the test components had emotional states. The idea was absurd, illogical, and yet the harmonic pattern Ben had created was undeniably superior to the standard solution. First trial completed in 31 minutes, Queen Vex announced. New record established. Proceed to second trial. The second trial took place in a simulation chamber that could recreate any environment. Ben found himself in what appeared to be a burning building on an alien world. The gravity was wrong, the air was thin, and the building structure was unlike anything in human architecture. "You must rescue the trapped individuals and reach the exit," Queen Vex explained. "The building will collapse in 20 minutes. Ben could hear voices calling for help from different directions, but the corridors were filled with toxic smoke and the floors were unstable. Previous candidates had typically chosen to save as many individuals as possible, even if it meant risking the mission's failure. A few had prioritized their own survival above all else. Ben did something different. He stopped in the first corridor and examined the building structure. The walls were made of a material that looked like stone but felt organic when he touched it. The building wasn't just collapsing, it was dying. "You're not a building at all," Ben said to himself. "You're some kind of creature." He pressed his palms against the wall and felt a faint pulse, like a heartbeat. The trapped individuals weren't people caught in a fire, they were parasites that were killing their host. The building creature was trying to destroy itself to get rid of them. Instead of rescuing the parasites, Ben began looking for the creature's vital systems. He found what might have been a nervous system running through the walls, damaged and infected. Working quickly, he began removing the parasitic entities, but instead of carrying them to safety, he found ways to neutralize them harmlessly. As he worked, the building's shaking stopped. The fires went out. The toxic smoke cleared. By the time he reached the exit, the building creature was healthy again, its walls glowing with renewed life. Queen Vex stared at the simulation results in disbelief. Ben had achieved something that wasn't supposed to be possible. He had saved both the trapped entities and the building by reconceptualizing the entire scenario. More importantly, he had recognized that the simulation wasn't testing rescue skills, it was testing whether he could think beyond the obvious assumptions. Second trial completed in 18 minutes, Queen Vex announced, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been awe. Solution method unprecedented. Proceed to final trial. The third trial chamber was different from the others. It was a simple room with white walls and a single object in the center, a sphere of dark crystal that absorbed all light that touched it. The essence manipulation trial, Queen Vex explained. You must move the sphere using only your mental energy. No physical contact permitted. The sphere weighs 500 kilograms and is composed of psychically resistant material. Ben approached the sphere and sat down cross-legged in front of it. Every other candidate had attempted this trial through force of will, trying to project mental energy powerful enough to overcome the sphere's resistance. The strongest had managed to make it vibrate slightly. Ben simply sat and looked at the sphere for a long time. It's not about moving it, he finally said. It's about understanding why it doesn't want to move. He reached out with his mind, not to push or pull, but to listen. The sphere wasn't just psychically resistant, it was afraid. It had been moved against its will so many times that it had learned to protect itself by becoming immovable. Ben began to project not force, but understanding. He showed the sphere that he wasn't trying to control it or use it. He was simply curious about what it might want to do if it felt safe. Slowly, almost hesitantly, the sphere began to rise into the air. It floated gently upward, rotating slowly as if stretching after a long sleep. Then it began to dance, moving through the air with graceful loops and spirals, clearly enjoying its freedom. In the observation chamber, Queen Vex rose from her throne for the first time in decades. What she was witnessing should have been impossible. Ben wasn't manipulating the sphere, he was communicating with it. He had turned a test of mental dominance into an exercise in empathy and connection. Trial completed, she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Time elapsed, 12 minutes. Method, unknown. As Ben stood up and thanked the sphere for its dance, Queen Vex realized that everything she thought she knew about testing and evaluation might be wrong. This human hadn't just passed the trials, he had fundamentally changed what they meant. She had to meet him in person. Queen Vex descended from her crystal throne and walked through the corridors of her testing facility for the first time in over a century. Her crystalline form moved with fluid grace, each step sending ripples of light through the transparent floors. The facility's automated systems dimmed their illumination in respect for their ruler's passage. She had to see him for herself. Ben Walsh sat in the post-trial chamber, calmly drinking something that resembled tea from a crystal cup. Instructor Zara stood nearby, her light patterns cycling through colors that indicated deep confusion. She had been conducting trials for 50 years and had never seen anything like what had just happened. When Queen Vex entered the chamber, her presence filled the room with an almost overwhelming sense of power and authority. Most beings who stood before her immediately showed signs of fear or submission. Some tried to appear brave and ended up looking foolish. A few attempted to match her regal bearing and failed miserably. Ben simply looked up from his tea and smiled. "You must be Queen Vex. Thank you for the hospitality. Your facility is remarkable, though I still think you could improve the energy efficiency by about 15%. Queen Vex stopped, her purple gem eyes studying this strange human. He showed no fear, no attempt to impress her, no signs of being overwhelmed by her presence. He was treating her like any other person he might meet during his daily work. "You are not what I expected," Queen Vex said, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that could shatter steel or soothe savage beasts. "I get that a lot," Ben replied, taking another sip of his tea. "Most people expect maintenance engineers to be different somehow. But we're just people who like to fix things." Queen Vex moved closer, her crystalline form towering over the seated human. "You have just completed trials that have broken the minds of warriors, stumped the greatest scientists in the galaxy, and defeated champions of 100 worlds. Yet you speak of yourself as ordinary." Ben shrugged. "The trials weren't that hard once you understood what was really going on. The crystal puzzle wasn't about math, it was about helping them make music together. The building rescue wasn't about saving people, it was about healing a sick creature. The sphere moving wasn't about force, it was about making friends with something that was scared." "Exactly," Queen Vex said, and for the first time in centuries, her voice carried wonder instead of authority. "You did not solve our trials. You transformed them into something entirely different." She began to pace around Ben, her movements creating patterns of light that filled the chamber with shifting colors. "For 800 years, I have used these trials to measure species. I have seen beings of incredible strength, intelligence beyond measure, and psychic powers that could reshape matter. But they all approached the trials the same way. They tried to overcome the challenges through superiority." Ben finished his tea and set the cup down carefully. "That's the problem with tests. People think they're supposed to prove they're better than the test. But sometimes the real answer is to make the test better." Queen Vex stopped pacing and stared at him. "Explain." "Well, take your crystal harmony puzzle. The way it was set up, there was only one correct answer, and everyone who took the test tried to find that answer faster than anyone else. But the crystals weren't really happy with that answer. They were just tolerating it. So I listened to what they actually wanted and helped them achieve that instead. But the test was designed to measure logical thinking and mathematical ability," Queen Vex protested. "Sure, but why limit yourself to that? The crystals had their own intelligence, their own desires. By including them as partners in the solution instead of just tools to manipulate, we created something better than any of us could have made alone." Queen Vex felt something shift in her crystalline mind, a sensation she had not experienced in centuries. The human was describing a way of thinking that was completely foreign to Zentari culture. They had built their empire on logic, efficiency, and the dominance of superior intelligence. They solved problems by applying greater force or more advanced technology. "Your species fascinates me," she admitted. "Tell me about humanity. What makes you different from the others we have encountered?" Ben leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. "I'm probably not the best person to ask about that. I'm just an engineer. But if I had to guess, I'd say it's because we don't like to leave things broken." "Elaborate." "Most of the problems I deal with in my work aren't really technical problems. They're relationship problems. The mining robots that started fighting each other weren't malfunctioning. They were lonely and frustrated. The atmosphere processor that started making toxic gas wasn't broken. It was trying to communicate that it needed different input materials. Once you realize that machines and systems have their own kind of feelings, fixing them becomes about understanding what they need, not just forcing them to work. Queen Vex processed this information with growing amazement. The Zenthri had created the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but they had never considered that their machines might have emotional needs. They built tools to serve specific functions and replaced them when they stopped working efficiently. You treat everything as if it were alive, she observed. Well, in a way, everything is alive. Even crystals grow and change over time. Even simple machines develop patterns and preferences. Most people don't notice because they're too busy trying to control things instead of working with them. Queen Vex moved to the chamber's large viewport and gazed out at the stars. For 8 centuries, she had ruled an empire built on the principle that superior beings should guide and control inferior ones. The Zenthri had conquered hundreds of worlds not through cruelty, but through the logical application of their advanced capabilities. They believed they were helping lesser species by giving them structure and purpose. But what if they were wrong? Human Benjamin Walsh, she said without turning from the viewport. I wish to conduct an experiment. I will show you one of our imperial challenges, a problem that our greatest minds have worked on for decades. I want to see how you approach it. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a 3-dimensional map of a star system. The central star was dying, slowly expanding and cooling. 12 worlds orbited the dying star, each inhabited by different species that the Zenthri had brought into their empire. The Korvax system, Queen Vex explained. The star will become uninhabitable for carbon-based life within 50 years. We must relocate 47 billion beings to other worlds. Our current plan requires 130 years to complete, but we do not have that much time. We have assigned our best logisticians, our most powerful computers, and our most efficient resource managers to solve this problem. They have achieved minimal improvements to the timeline. Ben studied the hologram, rotating it with hand gestures to examine the system from different angles. He spent several minutes looking at the planets, their populations, and the shipping routes between them. Your plan is based on moving people away from the dying star, he finally said. Of course. The star will no longer sustain life. But you're not just moving people. You're breaking up communities, separating families, destroying cultures that have developed over thousands of years. No wonder it's taking so long. Half the populations probably don't want to leave. Queen Vex turned from the viewport, her light patterns shifting to deep blue. The alternative is death. Logic dictates that survival takes precedence over cultural preferences. Does it though? Ben asked. What if instead of moving the people away from the star, we moved the star away from the people? That is impossible. Stars cannot be relocated. Ben grinned, and Queen Vex realized she was seeing something she had never witnessed before, the moment when a human got excited about solving a problem. Stars can't be relocated, Ben agreed, but they can be rejuvenated. Your people have mastery over crystal technology, right? And crystals can store and channel enormous amounts of energy? Yes, but... So we build a massive crystal matrix around the dying star. Instead of letting its energy dissipate into space, we collect it, concentrate it, and feed it back into the star's core. We're not moving the star, we're helping it remember how to burn properly. Queen Vex stared at the human in complete silence. The solution was theoretically possible, but it had never occurred to any Zenthri to attempt it. They were accustomed to working around problems, not transforming the fundamental nature of the problems themselves. The energy requirements would be enormous, she said slowly. The crystal matrix would need to be larger than most planets. Sure, but you've got 12 worlds full of people who love their home system. I bet they'd be willing to help build something to save it. Instead of spending 130 years moving everyone away, you could spend 50 years working together to save their star. And at the end, instead of scattered refugee populations, you'd have a rejuvenated system and 47 billion people who accomplished something amazing together. Queen Vex felt her crystalline form beginning to resonate, a sign of deep emotional response that she had not experienced in centuries. The human wasn't just proposing a solution to the Korvac problem. He was suggesting a completely different approach to governance, to relationships between different species, to the fundamental purpose of the empire itself. You would turn evacuation into collaboration, she whispered. People work harder and better when they're working to save something they love instead of running away from something they fear, Ben said simply. Queen Vex walked slowly around the chamber, her mind racing through the implications of what Ben had suggested. If this approach worked for the Korvac system, it could work for hundreds of other problems throughout the empire. Instead of managing subject populations, they could be building partnerships. Instead of imposing solutions, they could be discovering them together. Human Benjamin Walsh, she said, stopping in front of his chair. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. The trials were designed to determine whether your species would serve the Empire or join it as equals. Based on your performance, I am prepared to offer humanity full partnership in the Zenthari Confederation. Ben nodded. That's generous. What's the proposition? I want you to stay. Not as a representative of humanity, but as an advisor to the Empire itself. I want you to help us learn this new way of thinking, this approach that transforms problems instead of simply solving them. I want you to teach us how to see the universe the way humans see it. Ben was quiet for a long moment, considering the offer. Finally, he looked up at the Crystal Queen who ruled over hundreds of worlds. I'll do it, he said, but on one condition. Name it. We don't just change how the Empire solves problems. We change what problems we think are worth solving. Instead of asking how to manage different species more efficiently, we start asking how to help them become the best versions of themselves. Instead of maintaining order, we focus on encouraging growth. Deal? Queen Vex extended one crystalline hand to the human engineer. When Ben shook it, light flowed between their joined hands, sealing an agreement that would transform the galaxy. Deal, she said, and for the first time in 800 years, Queen Vex smiled. As word spread throughout the empire that the human trials had ended not in conquest or submission, but in partnership and transformation, Ben Walsh prepared for the most important job of his career, teaching an empire how to fix itself by learning to see the universe through human eyes. And back on Earth, Captain Ana Rivera watched the Zenthari ships change their formation from a threatening blockade to a welcoming escort, and knew she had chosen exactly the right person for the job.